Joining us today, I'm Heath Henning, and this is Truth Watchers Podcast. Here we have a focus on apologetics and expository teaching so we can uphold the words of 3 John verse 4. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Also, check us out at truthwatchers.com, where we have a lot more materials available, articles, and even free ebooks. If you enjoy these podcasts, share them with a friend or on social media. Today we're going to continue our series discussing Michael Heiser's, and potentially this will be our last one of this series unless something else comes up later on. We could always add to it. Or if you want more information, you could always order the book, The Unbiblical Realm, which is very thorough, very thorough. We're going to be dealing with Michael Heiser's primary passage, Psalm 82, and how he misinterprets it. In my books, The Unbiblical Realm, I provide a thorough exegesis of Psalm 82. It expands from page 305 to 321. Today, we're only hitting a few highlights of this discussion because there's also other information we want to deal with. First, I'm going to read Psalm 82, the entire 8 verses. So everyone knows exactly what it says. We could talk about it, but if we don't quote it, people might not be aware of it. All right. So Psalm 82 says, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, and thou shalt inherit all nations. I'm going to discuss this as a literary structure. First, there's a chiastic form, and it's kind of hard to talk on a podcast about a chiastic form. Is something you need to more see, laid out in front of you as it's written. But there's a chiastic form. It has an antithetical climax. All right. So the first portion of the chiasm is God stands and judges the gods. That's verse 1. And that's contrast to the reversal where in verses 6 through 8, the gods fall and God judges. All right. Now, B of this chiasm, we have, and that's obviously that antithetical climax. God stands, judges the gods, gods fall, God judges. All right. In B, we have verse 2, which the gods judge unjustly with partiality, which on the reversal side is verse 5, where the gods have no understanding and are in darkness. That's why they're judging partially and unjustly. In C, the middle pivot point is the central point, which describes how just judgment should be. That's verses 3 through 4. All right. So in this literary structure, A and the reverse A are antithetical, with God standing while the gods are judged, contrast to the gods falling while God is judging. The B portion, B and the reverse B, are describing the fact that the gods are judging unjustly due to the fact that they have no understanding and their minds are in darkness of the law that they should be judging with. And then C, the pivot point, is sandwiched in the middle as the meat of the psalm, identifying the didactic, the doctrinal purpose, the teaching purpose of which proper judgment would look like. And then after that description, that teaching of what proper judgment should look like, C is followed afterwards by describing proper judgment. B, the reverse B, is logically follows by expressing the corrupt judges are in darkness to understand the law. They don't have they're in darkness of knowledge of the law as it should be. And then the reverse, the climax of A at the end is presenting the gods as being judged as the climax. The major theme of this psalm in the literary structure is unquestionably the idea of judgment. All right, so we have the root shaphat, which judge, to judge, as the verb appears frequently. It's an akal imperfect in verse 1 and in verse 2 is an akal imperative in verses 3 and 8. The title of the psalm is a psalm of Asaph. Okay, so Asaph, you got different commentators that say different things about Asaph because there's actually multiple Asaphs throughout scriptures. But if we compare other psalms that are a psalm of Asaph, we see that it demands a date of its composition after the Babylonian captivity. So like Psalm 74, 1 through 10, or Psalm 79, 1 through 7. All right, these psalms of Asaph clearly represent Jerusalem being destroyed, the temple being destroyed, the Babylonian captivity taking place. And this would properly identify a historical backdrop, which would be Babylon, or the Medo-Persia era after the Persians dominated Babylon. And this, obviously, one of Heiser's errors with interpreting this psalm is that he depicts it as an Ugaritic backdrop, claiming the Baal cycle backdrop. And that's a horrible backdrop to place on something that he even admits, with all liberal scholars as well that I'm familiar with, that this psalm in Asaph is properly placed in the Persian period. So he's not even consistent with his own logic for when he dates the psalm's composition. Our major interest here is, who are these gods in verse 1? So we're not going to do a whole exposition on the entire psalm. We're just going to focus on that particular topic. Who are these gods in verse 1? So verse 1 says, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. Who are these gods? Verse 1 gives the phrase congregation of the mighty as a parallel to among the gods. The word congregation is Ada. It is used 140 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 50 times in the construct form, all of which are referring to the congregation of Israel, with the exception of 8 times. 9 times if you include Psalm 82:1. And by the way, I identify these gods as Gentile kings that should be judging properly, but they're not. All right, all the kings of the world are ordained to their role according to Romans 13. All of the authorities are ordained by God, which is why we should obey them. But being ordained by God, they need to be judging righteousness and justly. Otherwise, they are actually going to be judged by God for abuse of their authority. Anyways, an entirety of 9 times, including Psalms 82, where this word's used, Ada, is used in the construct form. Out of these few times, it is used referring to Gentiles. 5 times are construct forms. 6 if we include Psalm 82 verse 1. In the book of Psalms, it is used 5 times for Israel and 4 times for Gentiles. 5 times if we include Psalms 82:1. Through the whole Bible, there's no concept of Ada being implied as a congregation of this divine council or any spiritual beings. It never happens throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. There's definitely no valid expression in the Bible itself to interpret the word congregation, Ada, as an assembly of divine or disembodied beings. The phrase in the congregation of the mighty, Ba'edath El, shows that El, the mighty, is parallel to God's, Elohim, is the supreme father god in early Ugaritic paganism. However, in the Ugarit, El was replaced by Baal as the head deity by the 9th century BC, which makes it questionable the psalmist from a Persian period would expect his readers to understand such an archaic foreign religious portrait. Very unlikely. The El here is intended as plural, since it's in the congregation of El, which Jehovah stands in the midst of. The BDB, Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew Lexicon, gives the first definition of El as, quote, applied to men of might and rank, unquote. And that would be on page 42, assuming it's all always the same edition, but I guess it could possibly be different. I don't know if there's different editions with different page numbers. Anyways, Jehovah is said to judge among the gods which are located on earth. frequently in this psalm, it's on earth. Psalm 82 verse 5, Psalm 82 verse 8. They are unjustly judging other humans in Psalms 82, 2 through 4. Okay, so these are judges on earth unjustly judging humans. Therefore, Heiser presenting Psalm 89, 5 through 7 as a parallel to Psalm 82, 6 is not accurate. His whole claim of these gods being actual divine beings is based on a false parallel, because Psalm 89, 5 through 7 puts these beings in heavens. And Psalm 82, our psalm discussing these gods, they're placed on earth judging humans. The Mishnah, composed 200 AD, further relates, quote, "This was the psalm which the Levites used to sing in the temple. On the third day they sang, God standeth in the congregation of God. He is a judge among the gods." Now, that's not to imply that the Jews historically had accurate interpretations of this text, but it at least shows that Heiser's claim in Second Temple Judaism taught this divine council existed in the psalm is baloney. It's nowheres. There's nowheres in any Second Temple literature. And if you want to challenge me on that, read my book, because I go through a lot of Second Temple Jewish literature throughout my book, with over 2,000 footnotes. Probably half of them is ancient literature, showing that Heiser misrepresents ancient literature when he's quoting it. He changes, he alters the quotations. I've caught him on multiple occasions altering quotations to make it fit his divine counsel presuppositions, and he's actually just lying a lot. But now let's look at Psalm 82 verse 6. It says, "I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High." All right. This is the verse that the Lord Jesus Christ quotes to his opponents in John 10, verses 34 through 36. Clearly, he spoke this passage to other humans, which identifies how he understood the passage. They wanted to stone him because he said, I and the Father are one. And he quotes this passage, indicating that they were falsely judging him. And he wasn't calling them gods as a divine council. He was calling them false judges, unjust judges. All right, that's how he used it. And of course, Jesus Christ lived during the Second Temple. So again, the New Testament's quotation also shows us, just like the Mishnah, that the Jewish understanding during the Second Temple time, this psalm was understood as human judges. It is common knowledge that Gentile kings were worshipped as gods. For example, Herod Agrippa is a well-known example of one who received such worship in Acts 12:22, but had to acknowledge his own mortality in verse 23. It says, the people gave a shout saying, it is the voice of a god and not of a man. And immediately an angel of the Lord smote him because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost. All right. Later, rabbinic text also refers to priests as godlike beings who had authority to issue decrees for angels in heaven, which the angels obey, and decrees for Israel on earth, which Israel obey. And that's actually a quote. I forgot to put quote and unquote on it, but that's from Pesikta di Rab Kohanan, page 232. It's Pesca 12:5, if anyone's even going to cross-check to make sure I'm not lying. That's why I always quote my sources, so you know I'm not lying. Heiser will fudge his quotations. I'm not going to. And I encourage people to look up any of the quotes that I ramble off to confirm that I'm not fudging these quotations that I'm offering. All right, Psalm 82:7 states, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Here, Heiser makes the big deal out of his faulty logic based on the term ye shall die like men. He contends that, quote, first, if the Elohim in Psalm 82 are humans, why are they sentenced to die like humans? The point of verse 6 is that in response to their corruption, the Elohim will be stripped of their immortality at God's discretion and die as humans die. A clear contrast is intended by both the grammar and structure of the Hebrew text, saving us from such logic. unquote. That's Heiser in his article on monotheism in page 19. The Hebrew term in question is ka-adam. All right, the word men, Adam, we actually Adam's name, right? Prefix to the preposition ka, which against Heiser's claim is not to present a contrast between humans and gods. Rather, it's actually showing the likeness. So again, quoting BDB's lexicon, Hebrew lexicon, this is a very common preposition, but they say, quote, to compare an object with the class to which it belongs and express its correspondence with the idea which it ought to realize, unquote. That is BDB page 454. Let me read that again. Okay, BDB, the preposition ka, quote, to compare an object with the class to which it belongs and express its correspondence with the idea which it ought to realize, unquote. So here the gods are not contrasted, but compared to humans because they belong to the human class and they're corresponding an idea, they shall die. They ought to realize that. In other words, the comparison is not between gods and humans, but expressed the similarity. Just like other men, that would be the way it's expressed, okay? Just like other men, these men will also die, being that they are the same class as mortals. Similar expressions are found in Psalm 49, verse 10 and 12, all right? Says, for he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fools and the brutish person perish. Nevertheless, men being in honor abideth not, he is like the beasts that perish. So here, the honorable person is not being contrasted to the beast, but express correspondence with the idea of its mortality and is warned, which the honorable man ought to realize. Our psalmist Asaph used the very same preposition to compare similarities of armies that would be destroyed in Psalm 83, verses 8 through 11. Now, listen to this, because this is the very next psalm after Psalm 82. Verse 9, it says, do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kidron. Verse 10, which perish at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Verse 11, make their nobles, here's these kings, right? Nobles, like Oreb and like Zeeb. Yea, all their princes as Zeba and as Zalmunna. All right, all this like and as, these references, same preposition, same grammatical construct that we find. Okay, this being written by the same author, following an immediate context of Psalm 82 should be proof enough how the phrase is meant to be understood. Furthermore, it is unlikely that Heiser could have honestly overlooked this passage since it follows Psalm 82. When he says, quote, a clear contrast is intended by both the grammar and structure of the Hebrew text, unquote, he is clearly lying to his audience. I doubt he is ignorant of this grammar, which refutes his premise and is found in the very next psalm, Psalm 83. More specifically, being prefixed to the Hebrew word Adam in Hosea 6:7, which is obviously not contrasting gods and humans. It says, Hosea 6:7 says, quote, but they like men, ka Adam, have transgressed the covenant, there have they dealt treacherously against me, unquote. The context from verse 4 identifies it's referring to Ephraim and Judah. Heiser's argument is neither sound logically nor accurate grammatically. Furthermore, the expression die like men is likely a rhetorical technique of irony since Gentile kings deified themselves. As noted, Asaph wrote in this psalm during the Babylonian captivity or after the captivity in the Persian period. It was the Israelites who felt oppressed during the Babylonian captivity and viewed their captors as evil enemies. Just read, for example, Psalm 137. All right. Yet The deified kings were greeted with the phrase, "O king, live forever." Daniel 2:4, Daniel 3:9, Daniel 5:10, Daniel 6:6, and 6:21, Nehemiah 2:3, just examples of that. O king, live forever. In Psalm 82:7, God is informing these pagan kings who are believed to be and self-deceived about their assumed divinity. They are not gods, and they will not live forever because they will die like all other men. Even Heiser's beloved Ugaritic religion, we find a better parallel than his claim that Psalm 82 follows a Baal backdrop. In the Carrot epic, a human king named Carrot is called the son of El, with a mention of 70 peers. When King Carrot falls sick, it is questioned if he would die like mortals, die like men. And finally, quote, "Shall then a god die, an offspring of the kindly one, not live?" The kindly one is a epithet for El in Ugarit. In the last quote, El requests a council of gods who would heal Carrot, but after 7 times, no gods would grant an answer to El. So El heals Carrot himself with working magic. Then, quote, "Carrot returns to his former estate. He sits upon the throne of kingship, upon the dais, in the seat of authority," unquote. This is all from ancient Near Eastern texts related to the Old Testament, pages 147 through page 149. In this Ugaritic text, we see a king perceived to be a god, the son of El, who, when fallen sick, is expected to die like all other mortals. We also find that this king sits apart from a divine council of the Ugaritic mythological gods, which are in heaven, while Carrot is on earth. Surely this matches the text of Psalm 82 a lot more better than any other text discovered yet. Also considers Luke 20, verse 35 through 36, which tells us, "But they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, neither can they die any more, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection." Here the resurrected saints are said to be like angels. Heiser admits angels became an ontological term in the Second Temple Judaism. So if angels don't die, they are greater than the alleged gods of Psalm 82 that in Heiser's view. However, Heiser teaches both these gods can die and resurrected men can die. You heard me correctly. He teaches even deified mankind that supposedly are to replace the judged Elohim can lose their salvation if they choose to rebel against God at any time in eternity. He writes, if in Unseen Realm, page 241, quote, "If the plan of God for the Messiah's mission had been clear, the powers of darkness would never have killed Jesus. They would have known that his death and resurrection were the key to reclaiming the nations forever," unquote. So God reveals the plan through secret cryptic codes, according to Heiser, that are undiscernible to men because he had to hide it from these falling sons of God. Again, on the Unseen Realm, page 243, quote, "It had to be expressed in sophistication and cryptic ways to ensure that powers of darkness would be misled," unquote. Therefore, it becomes necessary to use an allegorical method to interpret scriptures, and only Heiser knows this allegorical method to decode this cryptic revelation. He becomes a cultic leader with the authority as the only one who can actually exegete the allegorical interpretation. Heiser states, quote, "Divine beings such as Satan and the fallen sons of God in Genesis 6, 1 through 4 and Deuteronomy 32, 8 are now under judgment and no longer part of God's administrators, his sovereign oversight," unquote. Heiser's book Angels, page 16, note 39, footnote 39. So Jehovah is not sovereign over Satan or the fallen sons of God. That's Heiser's theology. Heiser stresses Hasatan from Job. The Hebrew phrase Satan is not a personal name so much that he repeats it at least in 4 of his books. Ultimately, it is because he strives desperately to preserve the autonomy of these divine rebels. Heiser cannot allow rebellious gods to remain under Jehovah's sovereign authority. They are utterly defiant and rebellious. Even God's faithful heavenly host can choose to rebel at any time throughout eternity, as can deified humanity, causing them to be stripped of their immortality and cast into hell. And it's kind of questionable whether Heiser actually believes in hell. This premise in Heiser's theological system has caused Gary Gilly to accuse him of being an open theist in his book review of The Unseen Realm. Heiser says in his book Demons, and on page 190, quote, though many Bible readers, even scholars, presume otherwise, spirit beings in rebellion against God are not portrayed as remaining in God's service. The presumption confuses God's sovereign status over evildoers with the notion that they are, so to speak, yet in God's employ. But in his view, those who may be called faithful can choose to rebel and be terminated at any time. It is accurate to understand Heiser as propagating open theism, meaning God does not know the future. Heiser's God, Yahweh, cannot predict which of his sons will rebel against him after setting them in authority over the nations. He is not sovereign over Satan or anything for that matter, since he cannot know for sure the future. God's sovereignty is based merely on an individual entity's choosing to be subjected to God. None of his created entities need permission from him and can do anything they please. He has to plan to save mankind and keep it hidden from his rebellious sons ruling over the nations. If they catch wind of it, they might disrupt his agenda and his plan. Nor can this Yahweh keep his promise to man that they can receive eternal life, since he does not know if his chosen replacements for the rebellious divine sons will rebel or not after they are deified. This is Heiser's theology, and people don't really think through what he's actually saying, but that's what he's saying. All right? So be cautious about this wolf in sheep's clothing. We got to end this now, so I thank you for joining. This is Heath Henning. Thank you for listening to Truth Watchers podcast. Tell a friend to tune in. For more fascinating facts, check us out at truthwatchers.com.